Hey guys, so I'm sure you saw the video I put up earlier, the short. If you didn't see it, I went and attended the House Oversight hearing today on the Bureau of Prisons. Now, this was actually supposed to happen last week. If you guys remember, I was going to go attend it. I actually did go down there, and the doors were closed and locked. And the reason was it was postponed while we didn't have a Speaker of the House. So once we got Mike Johnson, they rescheduled this. And so it was today. And I was very disappointed, I will say. As I said in the short that I put up earlier when I was outside the Rayburn building, I am very, very disappointed in our elected officials. As far as I know, this hearing was the first time that we've had any kind of oversight hearing on the Bureau of Prisons. And with everything that has been going on and all of the concern about how certain people are being treated, like the um, infamous day in January 2021ers. So there's questions about that and how they've been treated, how they've been moved around. I mean, we've talked about what's happened to the Whitmer guys. There were the guys who were charged at the state level. They were not charged federally, and they were in state prisons that just got moved to federal prisons across the country away from their families for no reason. Zero reason was given for why these moves happened. Moreover, mail is being tampered with and mail is not being delivered. This has been a problem. And we just had a hearing on it in one of the state cases for the Governor Whitmer kidnapping hoax, as you guys know. And as I covered, we just had a hearing for Paul Bellar and Joseph Morrison and why they were moved to federal prisons. Paul Bellar's lawyer had been unable to get legal mail into his client. He is a lawyer and he was being prevented from being able to contact his client. He had mailed Paul transcripts, which Paul needs to review to prepare for his appeal, and these appeals have to be done in a timely fashion. They have to be filed in a timely manner. You get 1 year, I believe it is, to file your appeal. So this is like, it's a timely matter. It's important that the lawyers can converse with their clients, and it's important that these guys are able to review their legal documents. But these transcripts, these legal mail was returned to sender. There was a filing made by Mr. Ambrose, Paul's lawyer, that showed the return receipt on his transcripts that he had sent Paul, and we've gotten zero explanation for this. Judge Wilson is giving he's giving, for whatever reason, the government there until December 1st to respond. Now, we also, as you guys remember, I'd been interviewing Adam and Barry while they were at Newaygo County for the documentary. They were participating in interviews, and I had just collected statements from them for the weaponization committee. If you guys recall, literally the day after I published a video of Barry's statement, they both got moved. Adam and Barry were both moved to two different Supermax prisons the next day. Oh, and I had my home raided twice. That's right. And so that happened. No questions were asked Director Peters about that, if she knew anything about that little coincidental thing that occurred, because she said, oh no, we do not do retaliation for political purposes, please. She says, we don't do any retaliation at all, and we're really focused on humanizing the prisoners. And it's like, ma'am, you're involved in massive human rights abuses, massive misconduct, abuse of prisoners, lack of proper medical care, people being put in solitary confinement as punishment, prisoners getting beaten by prison guards to the point where, in Ryan Samsel's case, he almost lost an eye. And so there's serious questions here, and that's not even getting into some of the other issues with these facilities. Like at the DC Gulag, they had a black mold problem. So there has been zero transparency. Director Peters, Colleen Peters, you know, who I saw today at the hearing when she was leaving outside in the hallway, Director Peters likes to say, oh, we're focused on transparency and accountability and integrity. The nerve. What integrity? What transparency? What accountability? There has been none. So I want answers about why these men were moved. Why were Adam and Barry moved to Supermax prisons? Why did they continue to be moved around? Why was Barry sent to Terre Haute? Then told he was going into the CMU, then told he was going into Gen Pop, then moved to Florence Supermax, Florence AdMax. What is the purpose of this? Keeping these guys constantly moving. It makes it very difficult to communicate with them. They're given one 15-minute phone call per month, and that's it. And these phone calls are $5 for a 15-minute phone call. None of this is acceptable. It is ludicrous. And so for today's hearing to go the way that it did, I am so angry. I'm so disappointed. Matt Gaetz, why didn't you ask about the Whitmer defendants? Why didn't you ask about why these men were moved to Supermax a day after providing statements to the Weaponization Committee, urging the committee to investigate government misconduct in their case? Why was no questions asked about that? It's stunning to me. And where's the reforms? Where is the oversight? Are we going to get bipartisan legislation to appoint an independent oversight body to provide actual transparency of the Bureau of Prisons? Because there's none right now. That should be... Why hasn't that legislation passed already? We do not need any more studies. Why is solitary confinement happening when we know it is a human rights abuse? It goes against, by the way, the Nelson Mandela United Nations Accords on torture. It is considered torture to have people in solitary confinement for even more than 48 hours. After 2 days, they say, according to the United Nations, that becomes torture. And I just want to talk to you guys about the process here of trying to find out, once these men are taken into the system and once the system has you, Department of Corrections, Bureau of Prisons, on the state and federal level, you basically become like a slave. There's no one looking out for you. There's nobody looking out for your interests. There's nobody being informed on your health. We know that medical care was being denied to people. Like the January 6th political prisoner, Christopher Worrell, who had cancer and was being denied, from what I understand, chemo treatments, and things of this nature. Like they were not, the Bureau of Prisons was not asked difficult questions today. And I will read from a letter I got from Paul Bellar, one of the Whitmer Fednapping hoax defendants from the state case. He's talking about not getting letters. He said that, thank you for reaching out to me. I never received your first letter, which, by the way, I would like to point out I sent 9 months ago, almost a year ago. So, of course, he didn't get that. He said that, they don't even give him the mail, they give him a copy of it. So it's even hard for them to read it. But he said if you ever have the time to visit, he'd be willing to speak with me. But he says that there's problems, you know, with the prisons. He says that he understands that the distance is hard. But he said, we never know what weekend we will be locked down for due to fights and such. My mail is heavily monitored and tampered with. I wouldn't be surprised if you do not receive this at all, or only receive copies of it. I hardly receive any letters as it is, so I'm sure this will interest them to peek into. Yeah, exactly. You know that's why I got this letter, why they let me get it, is because they're monitoring my communications with all of these guys, all of the Whitmer guys, state and federal, it doesn't matter. They're monitoring all of the communications, so that's why they let it go through, by the way, because they are interested in my response to some of the things he's talking about here, because he does talk about the case. He goes on to say the FBI is probably heavily watching you just for contacting myself and my other co-defendants. Please watch your back and be safe. If there's anything I can do to help you, please don't hesitate to ask. This is a 25-year-old man who is in prison potentially until 2063. Understand that. He was 21 years old when this all happened. And I really have no idea why he was even caught up in this. I mean, obviously, all of these men were framed and entrapped, but him specifically, he moved away in July of 2020, months before the other guys were arrested. He moved away from Michigan to back home to South Carolina to live with his family. So they arrested him anyway. And it's just, when you look at all of the discovery, and I've seen it, it's clear that he had zero involvement in that. None of them did, but you know what I mean. Like, he really didn't, because he left. He literally left the group. He created his own group where in the articles of the creation of the group, it specifically said, we are focused on training for defensive purposes, not offensive. That was clearly delineated, and that doesn't matter, though, because these trials were, let's be real, they're show trials, okay? Now, I want to show you guys, just to give you an idea of the kinds of things you have to do to get in to visit a prisoner. These are the kinds of forms you have to fill out. You have to go through background checks. The visitor forms are very hard to fill out. They're kind of weird, and there is no real guidelines on what gets you, what will get approved and what will not be approved. So they have to approve you for visitations. And this is what I mean by there being no accountability, no transparency, no oversight on any of these guys. They have their First Amendment rights, and we have our journalistic rights. They do not have the right to impede my communication with these men. Like, they simply do not have that right. And so, but they play these games, and they can prevent people from visiting. They can just reject your form, and they don't have to give you a reason why you were rejected. They'll just say you're not approved for visitation, and they don't have to tell you why. And there isn't a real process for escalating that and getting answers as to why this is happening. So unfortunately, I don't think that there's even media oversight of the prisons. How often does the media actually come in and report on the things that are happening in there? I would suggest that the answer is never. When are they ever given a peek into these facilities? And that's not even to get into the questionability of the for-profit prison system, slave labor, that is where prisoners are utilized for slave labor and are paid pennies, basically, for work that they're doing, and corporations get to enjoy this. So there's incentives for keeping people incarcerated, which is probably why America has the highest incarceration rate. But anyways, I'm just very disappointed about this entire hearing today. It lasted less than 2 hours. And again, I think it's the first of its kind. Yes, there should be an independent body. I don't care about the Inspector General for the Bureau of Prisons. Does the Department of Justice Inspector General ever do anything? No. Same with these internal affairs divisions. They never actually... Oh, guess what, guys? It turns out when you allow people to police themselves, oh, it's not the best idea. Who would have guessed that when you appoint people to investigate themselves and to self-police, they don't really self-police? Like, oh, you know what? We've investigated ourselves, and we've decided that we don't have to, we're not accountable to anything, and we've done nothing wrong, and we don't have to provide any answers to anybody to back up any of the things that we say, and that's it. And literally, like, what are you gonna do about it? That's how these people are, and there is no process for, like, escalating things, right? And that's what's terrifying to me, is the legal system and seeing what happens. Like, even if you are wrongfully arrested, wrongfully charged, wrongfully convicted, what's your recourse, really? What is your recourse? There doesn't seem to be one, and it should be terrifying to people that anything like what happened to the guys in the Whitmer case could happen to you. When you really look into it and you see that not only is there no evidence of any kind of plot to kidnap anybody, in fact, every time it's brought up by federal agents or their informants, it's basically laughed at, it's turned down immediately. People are saying, no, we don't want this. We're not black bagging politics. Like, it doesn't matter. You can have all of the evidence of your innocence, and you still have to wait for the process to play out, right? Years for appeals, and all the while, these innocent men are still sitting in prison. And not enough has been said, too, about things that are done to psychologically torment them, which is also happening. So, anyways, this is just a longer form video of me basically reiterating what I said in my short earlier today outside the Rayburn building, which is that today's hearing was a joke. It was ridiculous. On both sides of the aisle, left and right, there doesn't seem to be real interest in reforming the Bureau of Prisons, Department of Corrections, and the prison system, generally speaking. There were no questions asked about the Whitmer guys specifically, so that didn't happen. Jim Jordan wasn't there. Mike Johnson wasn't there. Matt Gaetz showed up briefly. That was it. And so it's just incredibly disappointing, and you can see why nothing is happening to help these guys. The Whitmer guys, the J6ers, same thing. There's no one there representing them in their interest. I did see Ashley Babbitt's mom, and I did see her being interviewed by the elevators when I was leaving. So I don't know who was conducting that interview, but I guess it will be out there. And I did see her speaking to some gentleman from the Gateway Pundit, but yeah, I'm sure she's saying the same thing I'm saying, that today's hearing seems to be a humiliation ritual, a joke, where these people just pat this woman on the head and say, oh, you're doing a great job. Okay, keep us informed, blah, blah, blah. And that's it. Oh, we're going to get you more resources. Oh, okay. Let's not even spend 2 hours here. They took no questions from the public. I wasn't allowed to talk about the issues that I'm experiencing personally as a journalist, as a filmmaker, and that the families are experiencing, trying to contact their loved ones or visit their loved ones, and just the massive financial burden of that. It's just unsustainable, and it's ridiculous. And I'm not surprised that I was disappointed by today, but I'm going to keep pushing forward and trying to get these elected officials to care or to do something. So I would appreciate it if you guys share this and let people know, so that everyone's aware of the situation, and put more pressure on these politicians to do something, to say something for the Whitmer guys, for the J6ers, and to be more than just talk. We want action. Actions speak louder than words. We're not interested in your, harshly worded letters or your little clips that you can do of you asking strongly worded questions so you can run and post it online to fundraise. We want to see actual action taken and reforms made, legislation passed, whatever it is that needs to happen, so there can be real oversight and accountability. That's what needs to happen. And that's it.